My brand new Nikes vanished from a party, and a week later, a girl I barely knew showed up at my door holding them behind her back. I want you to understand something before we get into this. I was 17 years old. I had saved up for those shoes, and the person who stole them? They had no idea what was coming for them, and neither did I. My name is Lauren. I'm going to tell you this story the way it actually happened. No filter, no cleanup, just exactly how it felt to be 17 and completely humiliated in front of people I was desperately trying to impress. I was a junior in high school, living in a mid-sized suburb outside of Columbus, Ohio. I had a part-time job at a frozen yogurt shop 3 afternoons a week, and every dollar I didn't spend on gas or food went into a little envelope in my desk drawer that I had labeled, I am not joking, the shoe fund. Here's the thing. I wasn't sneakerhead in any serious way. I wasn't trying to collect or flip shoes or keep up with drops. I just wanted one really nice pair. One pair of shoes that, when I walked into a room, would make me feel like I belonged there. You know how it is when you're 17. You think clothing is armor. You think the right shoes can change the whole story of who you are. After almost 4 months of saving, I had enough. I drove myself to the mall on a Saturday morning, walked into the Nike store, and walked out with a pair of Air Madas in white and black. $140. I wore them out of the store. I looked down at them the whole drive home. When I got back to my house, I lined them up at the bottom of my closet and just looked at them for a minute. Proud. Genuinely proud. Of a pair of shoes. That was a Friday. I had exactly 2 days of just owning them, wearing them around my bedroom, trying them with different outfits, before I decided to debut them at the party. The party was at Monica's house. Monica was a year older than me, a senior, and she was one of those people who seemed to exist at the center of every social circle without even trying. Her parents were out of town. She had a big split-level house with a finished basement, and the invite had been spread across 2 different high schools, ours, Jefferson and Eastbrook, which was about 15 minutes away. I didn't know most of the Eastbrook kids. That was part of the appeal, honestly. New faces, people who didn't already have a fixed idea of who I was. I remember standing in front of my mirror that evening, pulling the laces tight on the Madas, thinking, this is going to be a good night. And that's when. The night started exactly the way you'd want it to. People complimented the shoes immediately. 2 different girls asked where I got them. Some kid from Eastbrook. I didn't catch his name. Actually crouched down to look at them up close. I remember feeling like I'd made exactly the right choice. I felt like myself. The best version of myself, maybe. Whatever that means when you're 17. Here's what you need to know about Monica's house. It had this long entry hallway, hardwood floors, cream-colored walls, and everybody left their shoes at the door. It was just understood. Monica's mom had cream carpet in the living room and everyone knew it. So when you came in, you slipped off your shoes and lined them up against the wall with everyone else's. I remember hesitating for just a second. These were brand new. I'd had them for 2 days, but it felt weird to be the only person walking around in shoes when everyone else was in socks. So I set them down neatly against the wall, right next to a pair of beat-up Vans, and I went inside. I wasn't thinking about them after that. I was just at a party, being a teenager. We were in the basement most of the night. Music, voices, somebody's phone propped up on a speaker. Hours passed the way they do at parties, in a blur of conversations and laughing, and a few awkward moments, and a few really good ones. And that's when I went to leave. It was somewhere around midnight. I walked back down the hallway to get my shoes, and there was a gap in the line. Right where I had left them, an empty space between the Vans and somebody's flip-flops. I checked by the door. Nothing. I looked behind the little bench. Nothing. I crouched down and looked under it. Nothing. I kept coming back to that same empty space on the floor, like if I stared at it long enough the shoes would just reappear. They did not reappear. I want to be honest about something. The feeling in that moment wasn't just anger. Anger I could have handled. What it actually was this specific, nauseating cocktail of embarrassment and helplessness. I was standing in someone else's hallway, in my socks, and someone had taken something of mine, and there was nothing I could do about it. Monica came and found me when she noticed me still hovering by the door. I told her what happened. She looked genuinely horrified. This was her house, her party, her her responsibility. She immediately started asking around, pulling people aside, checking rooms. She was trying. I'll give her that. She actually cared. A few people thought they might know who took them. There was a guy from Eastbrook, tall, wearing a gray hoodie, name was Derek, who had been crouched down looking at my shoes earlier in the night. A couple people said they'd noticed him leave earlier and thought they saw him carrying something. Nothing solid, nothing you could act on. You have to understand. There was no real recourse here. I was 17. I couldn't call the police over a pair of stolen sneakers from a house party. I couldn't confront Derek because I had no proof. And honestly, the thought of accusing someone in front of a crowd and being wrong, or worse, being right and having nothing happen anyway, felt just as humiliating as the situation itself. So I drove home in my socks. Let that image sink in for a second. Brand new car with the little pine tree air freshener, driving down a dark suburban road at midnight. No shoes on, my feet feeling every bump through the floor mat. I cried a little on the way home. Not a lot, just enough. The week that followed was strange in a way I didn't expect. I thought I'd move on faster. You know how it goes. Something frustrating happens, you're upset, and then a couple days later it's just a thing that happened. But this one had a weird sticking power. Part of it was practical, $140, 4 months of frozen yogurt shifts. I couldn't afford to just buy another pair, so every morning I reached for shoes and grabbed something else, and the absence of them was like a little reminder. Someone took something from you and got away with it. I kept coming back to the image of Derek walking out of that party. I'd never even spoken to him. We weren't in the same school. We didn't run in the same circles. I genuinely didn't know a single thing about him, except that a few people had pointed in his direction. I had no way to confirm it, no way to reach him. No leverage, no proof, no path. I want to be honest about something. I also spent some time asking myself whether I'd been careless. I'd set down a brand new pair of shoes at a party full of people I didn't know. Was I naive? Should I have brought a bag, put them somewhere safer, worn different shoes entirely? I kept going back and forth on that. The rational part of me knew that the answer was, it doesn't matter. Theft is still theft. The blame doesn't belong to me. But the human part of me, the 17-year-old who had saved up for 4 months, needed somewhere to put the frustration, and sometimes that somewhere was myself. Monica checked in on me once during the week. She texted me on a Wednesday, just a simple, "Hey, anything come up about the shoes?" And I told her no. She said she was sorry again. I told her it wasn't her fault. She said she was still asking around. I appreciated that. I wasn't expecting it to go anywhere, but I appreciated it. 1 week. Almost exactly 1 week later. It was a Sunday afternoon and I was at home doing homework, or pretending to, when the doorbell rang. I went to the door and opened it, and there was Monica, standing on my porch. And here's the thing. She had her arms sort of tucked behind her back like she was hiding something. She was smiling in this way that I couldn't read. Excited but also a little nervous. Or maybe just trying not to explode. I said, "Monica? What's going on?" She said, "I have something for you." And then she pulled her arms around from behind her back, and she was holding my Nikes. My shoes. My actual shoes, white and black Air Madas, in perfect condition. I just stood there for a second. I could not form words, and then I said something extremely intelligent like, "How?" She started laughing, that kind of laugh where someone has been holding something in all day, and they finally get to let it out. She told me what had happened. That same weekend, she had ended up at a different party, one that happened to have some of the Eastbrook crowd there. And she had spotted Derek, wearing my shoes. She recognized them immediately. White Madas, brand new, and she knew they were mine because she'd seen me wearing them earlier that night, and the image had stuck with her. She didn't make a scene. She didn't say anything to him. She just watched. And she waited. Monica told me the rest of the story, and I want to paint this picture for you, because it is genuinely one of the most satisfying things I have ever heard in my life. Derek had gone outside for what Monica called a smoke break, and she said that at some point while he was out there, shoes off, sitting on a porch rail, he'd set them down next to him. And Monica just walked over, picked them up without a word, tucked them under her arm, and walked back inside, calm as anything. No confrontation, no scene. Just a girl who saw an injustice and quietly corrected it. And then she told me the best part, the part that Derek never saw coming. When he came back inside and looked for his shoes. My shoes. They were gone. He was confused, then frustrated, then apparently very, very stressed, because he had to leave that party in his socks, just like I had. I'm not going to pretend there wasn't something deeply, deeply satisfying about that. I want to be honest about something. I thought about whether I should feel bad for enjoying it, whether the right, mature response was to just be glad to have the shoes back and move on gracefully. But you know what? I was 17. He stole from me, and the fact that he got to experience exactly what he had put me through, the confusion, the searching, the humiliation of walking out without shoes on, felt like the universe closing a loop in the most elegant way possible. Monica stood on my porch and handed me my Nikes, and I hugged her. Genuinely hugged her. She had not been obligated to do any of that. She could have spotted him, recognized the shoes, and thought, not my problem. She went out of her way for me, for a girl who was 1 year younger than her, who she knew mostly just from being in the same social orbit. And she walked out of a stranger's party carrying my shoes under her arm because she thought it was the right thing to do. Here's the thing. I think about Monica sometimes when I'm dealing with something that feels helpless, not in a dramatic way, just a quick mental image of her standing on my porch with that grin and my Nikes behind her back. There's something in that moment that reminds me that the universe occasionally does correct itself. Not always. Not on any schedule you can predict. But sometimes. And that's when I understood something about kindness. That the people who step up for you aren't usually the ones with anything to gain from it. Monica didn't know Derek. She wasn't trying to impress me. She saw a wrong and she fixed it. Quietly and completely. And then she drove to my house on a Sunday to hand me back something I'd given up on ever getting back. I still have those shoes. I wore them into the ground over the next 2 years. They're in a box somewhere in my closet now. Not in a shriny, weird way. But I haven't been able to throw them away either. I think I probably never will. If you've made it this far, thank you for sitting with this story. It's not a big dramatic betrayal. Nobody's life was ruined. But it's real. And sometimes the real ones hit different. If you've ever had something taken from you and felt completely powerless about it, drop it in the comments. I want to hear it. And if you've ever had a Monica in your life, someone who stepped up when they really didn't have to, tell me about that too. Those are the stories I live for. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more of this. New stories every day. And if this one hit, share it with someone who needs a little karma win today. Real stories. Real chaos. Real talk. I'm Storyboard Reddit.